Hello, I'm Rishikesh from the School of Education at Azim Premji University. Today at our university we have a very special guest. We have Tuomo Virtanen, who is a senior university lecturer at the University of Jyväskylä, Finland. In fact, he is also assistant professor at Stavanger University at Norway.
Norway, yeah.
And in fact, Tuomo is a person who loves to be engaged on a variety of research projects, and in fact currently he has 5 projects under him. Though his course is to do with special education, which he teaches, but then research projects are on varied topics, all of which Tuomo is of interest for us. But before we get into any specific project, what I would probably like to ask you is, when you look at students in Finland or probably any of the Nordic countries, I'm sure you would be able to share, what is the kind of expectation that you would have from students?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say that we have our compulsory education system up to 18 years of age of students. And this extension occurred like 2021. Before that, we have 9 years of comprehensive or basic education, which we call comprehensive education, which was compulsory. But since 1991, it was extended to upper secondary level. And now they are expected to study up to, at minimum, up to 18 years of age. Right. Regarding their schooling and attendance, of course, they are expected to pose a high agency in their learning and schooling, regular school attendance, and of course, so society as a whole, we have high expectations for our youngsters. So we want to educate them to the extent it's individually possible for all of the students.
Right. Thank you. In fact, I should have also clarified that when we are talking of students in this conversation, we are particularly interested in school students.
Absolutely. Not university students. So obviously we have some projects going on among university students. But my research focus, and I think the primary focus in Finnish education, as far as we are talking about these requirements and expectations, are on comprehensive school students, which means basically from the age of 7 up to 9th grade. And then it's more, even though it's compulsory, students have got older, they have more like voluntary basic issues going on.
Right. Yeah. Your PhD was on student engagement. I would love to really ask you a few questions about that. But before that, I think what really struck me is of the various projects that you're doing, the one on student absenteeism. It's also a very big issue for us in India. Multiple reasons for student absenteeism, and hence, there is no one single solution to it for us here. And at different stages of school education, we have different reasons that students have to not be present in school. But what I would like to ask you at first is, how do you define student absenteeism?
Yeah, that's a good question to start with. So basically there are a bunch of definitions. It's a complex phenomenon in general, but what we rely on comes from David Hain. And and we usually call it SEP, Students Attendance Problems. And student attendance problem is categorized into truancy, which is skipping classes deliberately. So they just decide they won't go to school, or they won't go to a class. And usually parents do not know this. At the beginning, they will let know it afterwards. But at the beginning, they don't know. Then we have school refusal. And the typical case is that students would like to go to school. They even may enjoy the school or they are engaged in school. But for various, often mental health issues like anxiety or school phobia, being bullied, having problems with peers, sort of prevents them from going to school.
Right.
It's not about their motivation primarily. Then we have school withdrawal. There are some cases, this is under-researched area basically, but school withdrawal is about parents not letting their children to go to school. And there may be various reasons. There may be mental health issues at home.
Right.
Parents may be facing those issues. Kids may they may not be willing to go to school because they are afraid of leaving their parents alone at home, or single parent. And then we have school exclusion, and that's basically school-initiated absenteeism. So school may be a bit of hostile towards a student, at least student experience it that way.
Right.
Okay, and they may shorten the school days of some students.
Yeah.
It's possible in Finland based on the school laws, but as any law, there is some flexibility in the interpretation.
Right.
And that's what we call school exclusion. So basically we have these 4 categories.
Right. Yeah. And the study or the project on school absenteeism or student absenteeism, as you call it, is it something that is focusing on all these 4, or is it any specific focus on one of them?
Yeah, we try to cover all 4 of them, but some of the categories are more easily researched than the others. For instance, truancy is quite well-researched area. School refusal is also, we have very good research knowledge on that. But school exclusion and school withdrawal, they are sort of sensitive. So it's very hard to go to ask principals or teachers, so why don't you let this kid come to school?
Right.
Maybe like an aggressive child or anything like that. Or not to mention you go to a family.
Right.
So what's the reason your kid doesn't come to school?
Yes.
Because I, as a parent, I have my mental health issues. It's not easily researched.
Yeah.
So we try to cover as much as possible, but truancy and school refusal are easiest categories to do research on.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. In fact, in one of the studies, a small study that I had done in trying to find out why students were not willing to go to school, the first response that students would usually give is that they don't like school. But we all know that there are these underlying layers in terms of why don't they like school, and one of them could also be, you know, what's happening within the school, right? Within the classroom, the rapport with the teachers, or even engagement with their peers. What are the things that have come out of your projects so far? Any insights that you would be willing to share?
Yeah, thanks for this question. First, one sort of point giving some sense of those underlying reasons. So a couple of years ago, I found an article which sort of listed 59 reasons for school attendance problems.
59.
59. And probably there are more now, because this was, I think it was like 6-7 years old article.
Right.
And I made a bit math. So if you pick up randomly 5 of the reasons out of 55 reasons, and then you assume that the student might have one of those 5 reasons or any interaction between those reasons.
Okay.
Interaction between 2 reasons, 3 reasons, up to 5 reasons.
Right.
And you end up almost 6 million different reasons.
Wow.
Or combinations of reasons.
6 million.
Almost. So you can imagine that you have to have very good tools for identifying the reasons, because you can't go and make a guess which one of those 6 million reasons is the one
Right.
that this student is facing.
Right.
Yeah, but coming to your question, so what we have now going on, one of the research projects, it's called Voitto, which is basically, it's an abbreviation of students studying in preparatory education in Finland, which means students with immigrant background status. And one of the line of research in this Voitto project is the school community. So we are doing action research in a bunch of schools in Finland. So what's the sort of atmosphere? What's the ethos? How do teachers? What's the culture between teachers, principals, and all that? So we like to think that the main reason, at least one of the main reasons, is not residing within individual, but it's the interaction between a given individual and the school community as a whole.
Right.
So that's the line of, and then we are talking about preventive acts. So how we could improve school to be more inclusive or more welcoming for all the students with different backgrounds.
Right.
So we have approximately 10% of individuals with immigrant backgrounds in Finland. So it's a growing number.
Right. Yeah. In fact, so there is another project itself focusing on the immigration integration that you are involved in, right? So when you are looking at multiple projects, and at this point of time, currently I think you're involved in 5 large research projects. So they feed into each other.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you gave one example now of how student absenteeism and this whole immigration issue. Similarly, your another project is on classroom interactions and focusing on the student engagement, I think.
Absolutely.
So if you can throw some light on what is that project at this point of time showing you?
Yeah, and it's a nice project. So this is something I conduct with my Norwegian colleagues, and the name of the project is Interact. Of course, refers to classroom interactions. But what we conceptualize classroom interactions into 3 broad domains. One of them being emotional support, which is a sort of overall general atmosphere in classrooms, in given lesson. So if there is joint smiling, laughing, sort of positive overall atmosphere.
Right.
Okay. And the other one is instructional support. So it's more about facilitating cognitive thinking skills, teaching effectively, have a right pacing in your teaching. And the third is what used to be called classroom management. But in this conceptualization, it's called organizational support. So optimally, everything would go like well-oiled machine, in a good sense, meaning that when you change from an activity to another activity, it goes smoothly.
Right.
Students are immediately involved in the next assignment, that kind of things.
Yeah.
And we do research how these 3 broad domains, how they have an influence on students' engagement. And we find a positive effect. The higher the level of those 3 broad domains, the higher the general level of students' engagement in a classroom. And we also conducted an intervention. So we had 7 cycles, and voluntary teachers in Norway, they were Norwegian teachers, they take an intervention which is based on teaching those in the interaction practices to students. They have all kind of material They have a mentor from university.
Right.
They are constantly in contact, and then they try to integrate all what they learn into
Right.
their classroom teaching.
Mm.
And our first publication is coming in the spring, early spring, I guess,
Okay.
depending on the reviewers.
Mm-hmm.
But I was told, all I can say, we are very positive about the results.
Okay. Yeah.
But not going to any details because it's not published yet.
Right, I know. Yeah. And how long have these projects been planned for? So when do you think, for instance, a project like this, which is looking at student engagement or classroom interaction, would give you a fair sense of that, now that you have more or less hit a plateau where nothing new is coming out? What is your sense? How long do you think this project should be?
The funding is usually like between 3 to 4 years is pretty like typical funding period. But we also have a very broad process and project going on in Finland, which the kick-off event was actually last week. And it's supposed to last 8 years. But after 4 years, we have an evaluation. And that's about the improvement in Finnish education in general. So we are doing research on student engagement, student absenteeism. Then we have all kind of effect studies, how effective interventions are.
Right.
And I mentioned this extension of compulsory schooling age.
Right.
So now we have a couple of studies looking at how this extension might have an influence on student outcomes, what happens after schooling,
Right.
and all that. So more and more research is done based on research on interventions
Right.
and policy changes.
Right.
But usually it's like 3, 4 years, but it takes time. As you know, publishing is very time consuming.
Yeah.
You write a paper, it takes a year,
Yeah.
and they take at minimum often a year
Right.
before it's open.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that, because I think we should acknowledge this fact that research, and particularly when you're looking at education and school education, we should be patient.
Absolutely.
And we should always be ready that it's a long, hard route, and you can't hurry up. It can't have overnight results.
No. It never happens like that. Never happens like that. And if you come back to this policy reform, which we had 2021,
Right.
so it's only 3 years ago.
Yes.
So how can we know? How can we know what happens to those students
Right.
that have gone through this extended period? What are their lifetime earnings, for example?
Right.
How they did do it in university or vocational education after the compulsory education?
Yes.
Or working life? We don't know yet. 3 years is just a short period of time.
Right.
As they say, the quarter of science is 25 years, not 3 or 4 months.
Right. Yeah. So in the Finnish system, or even other countries maybe, how is it that a researcher connects to the policymakers? Is it that the policymakers know what is the kind of research that is happening on the various policies that have got implemented, and they're waiting for researchers to finish? Or would the researchers continuously engage with the policymakers? How does this interaction happen? Because I think that is really where the value of your research is.
Yeah, that's a good question, because the politicians, they are not only worried about the society and the growth and flourishing of society and individuals in a society, but they are also worried about being re-elected.
Right.
And it seems to be the case very often that even a good research knowledge is provided to politicians. They just simply ignore, and they try to pick up low-hanging fruits.
Right.
to be in public, to show them in a good light,
Right.
and all that. But I have a very good experience. This was like 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We published a report in our university focusing school. But we published a report 2020, Ministry of Education at the time. Read the report, and we were told that some other politicians as well. And then we got the huge funding, which the abbreviation was SKY, which means like, in English it could be like engaging school community.
I see.
And we got 2 periods of funding based on the report, which was read by the politicians. And it was a success story. And this project ended last spring.
Oh, okay.
And one of the outcomes of this project was it was the final report, but it was written in the form of handbook.
Oh, I see.
So we were able to initiate some changes in Basic Education Act, that they should focus more on students' engagement and preventive acts,
Right.
and also the curriculum, nationwide curriculum.
Right.
And now, like, students' absenteeism and presence, which is the other side of the absenteeism, obviously, should be monitored more regularly.
Right.
And in a more rigorous way.
Yeah.
And also all the steps need to be taken to get the student back to the track as soon as possible.
Right. Yeah.
And that's important. That's important. Identify the problem and act as soon as possible.
Right.
These things seem to get worse when the time goes by.
True. Yeah. In fact, I think as you were saying, immigration being an issue in terms of, or rather not immigration as an issue, but then students who are from immigrant families.
Yeah.
Almost 10% of Finnish students are from such families, and working with them to ensure that there is an inclusive aspect coming into your system is something that is very crucial, and projects such as the ones that you're doing informs these tremendously. And so any things that have happened on those lines wherein your early results, though I know you're still a long way to go on most of these projects, but your early results informing policy matter on how to integrate students from immigrant families better particularly into the basic education in Finland?
Yeah. Language is the key. Language is the key.
Right.
So, because we have so wide variety of nationalities, students are, and their cultural heritage, their languages and all that varies a lot. So they have to be able to handle Finnish language or Swedish, because it's the other national language in Finland. But most students use Finnish.
Okay.
And without proper skills in Finnish language, it's very difficult. So the language teaching has to be very effective, and students have to be required to handle all the basic things.
Right.
And of course math as well as many subjects. But
Yeah.
the language is the key.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to facilitate those skills
Right.
more. And we are working on an assessment tool, basically. And when students are in the preparatory classes for immigrant background students,
Right.
teachers actually can have a very good tool to assess whether these students might be ready to be integrated in the regular education.
Right.
Because that should be the goal all the time. That should be in mind all the time. They are not supposed to be in these classes more than necessary.
Right, yeah. No, very interesting that you say that and you share this, because we in India also face something very similar. Though we don't have immigrant families as you face, but then we have migrant families.
Yeah.
right? So migrant families with their children, when they move from one region to another, they are facing these new languages. Um, for many of them, it's a very foreign language, though it could be a neighboring region's language. And the schools, particularly our public schools, operate with those languages of that region as a medium of instruction. So many children face it a daunting task to learn a new language and then start engaging in school interactions. So I think from what you are sharing, what is very important for us to look at is as to how do you ensure that children are taught these languages in a manner that they're able to uh, pick up things quickly, and for that have separate assessment tools rather than go with what everyone else is having as an assessment.
Yeah, that's correct. So you can assess the individual level for each student and whether a student is sort of ready to go forward into the integrated settings. And I also want to highlight, as I said it earlier as well, but this school community has to be welcoming. So it's not about individual student and teacher. It's not even about the individual classroom, but the community as a whole. But they also have to have these individual tools.
Right.
And this assessment tool is one of them.
Right.
And it's very much based on empirical research. We have some rigorous analysis going on, so we can identify individual items which clearly tells the level and clearly separates students' ability levels. So, but it's an ongoing process. Actually, in fact, the data collection process started 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I see.
So it's pretty new.
As fresh as that. Yeah, no, the other point is also very crucial in terms of ensuring that the environment that children face is not hostile.
Yeah.
Rather, not just not hostile, but be friendly, that they are hence having a positive vibe from the environment, which will enable them to learn things quicker, particularly the language.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
that's something what we call, in engagement research, it's called emotional engagement.
Right.
Or affective engagement.
Right.
So then it's about your relationships between your colleagues, if you're a teacher, in terms of students, the peer relations, relationship with teachers, and all that kind of things. It's very often it forms a base for other forms of engagement and learning in general.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, in fact, it is only if you have that as a non-negotiable, I would think that other things can fall into place. And other things can then ride on it, assessment tools and various other techniques. And in classroom interaction project, you have come up with what teachers could do at different levels. So all that, I think, can only build on this positive community, which is a welcoming community of students from different backgrounds.
Yeah. It's very important sort of baseline.
Right.
To start with. And then of course you need to have, as I told you about this instructional support, teaching has to be effective and all that. And the classroom has to be organized in a good manner. And then it is pretty much, if you achieve all these, then you are on a very solid ground in your teaching, and the schools should be effective in that sense. Principles, they are the key factors as well.
I see.
So our action research part is focusing on principles as well.
Okay.
So, and they are developing, it's Tampere University actually who is handling this part of our project. And they are, together with teachers and principals, they are creating sort of new practices which would be suitable for a given school and which it's feasible in the future as well, because those procedures has been planned together with the staff in school.
Right.
It's not given outside from the universities. And that's the nice feature of action research, actually.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, what's really interesting is that though Finland and India we are such different contexts, or right, our education systems are situated in such different contexts. But then, in terms of insights from research projects that you are handling, and also I would say many research studies that are happening in our country, I'm sure there is a lot of learning from each other's studies, and that's that's something I think we should always be open to, because many times we hear people saying that, oh, it's a very different country, it's a very different context, what's there to learn? But then I think there are some universal aspects.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, as humans, we have shared so much. So, if let's take for example self-determination theory,
Right.
the needs-based theory.
Yeah.
So you have autonomy. As a human,
Yeah.
we have a need for autonomy.
Right.
As a human, we have a need for competence. We have to be able to do things. It's the same in India and Finland and everywhere in the world. And we also have this need for relatedness.
Yeah.
So if you are forming and creating and facilitating an engaging school community, welcoming school community, it should work all over the world.
Absolutely.
Why should it be different in India than in Finland?
So true. Yeah. And finally, a technical question, because on similar lines, good research is good research, irrespective of where we're doing it, as long as those processes are adhered to, right? I know that you are are proud to be a quantitative researcher along with all other roles that you play. So in terms of quantitative research aspects and various techniques that you may have used in the project, how do you think that your quantitative research techniques have helped you in trying to find out some of these things in your project at this point of time?
Yeah, so let me give you a concrete example.
Yeah.
Coming from this Voitto immigrant background student research project. So in school we have students, of course, and we have lessons. We have classrooms, we have schools. All these four factors are nested within each, are nested.
Yeah.
The structure is nested. So lessons are nested within students.
Yeah.
Students are nested within classrooms. Classrooms are nested within schools.
Right.
Schools are nested even in neighborhoods, if you like.
Yeah.
But the nested structure. And structural equation modeling techniques are very well developed to handle this nestedness.
Right.
So in this project, we are looking at variation of students' engagement within individual, which means between classrooms.
I see.
Student may be very highly cognitively engaged in this lesson, but not next.
Right.
Okay. And then we can integrate what we have in this project. We have classroom observations. External researchers are focusing on some part what's going on in the lesson.
Right.
And in our statistical models, we can explain this intra-individual variation between lessons using these classroom observations.
Right.
And then we can extend this to the next level. We can add some student level characteristics explaining this variation over the lessons. They may be female students, they may be students who are from, say, from Asia, for example, that are more highly engaged than the others. Then we can introduce the classroom characteristics. So we get the information how is the classroom as a context influencing student engagement and school and so on.
Right.
So this is just an example, but structural equation modeling, it's basically an umbrella term. So it captures a wide variety, hundreds and hundreds of different models, which we can apply for different research questions, of course.
Right.
And my personal experience as well is that it structures your thinking of the phenomenon.
Right.
This nestedness is
Yeah.
sort of one example of structuring your thoughts.
Right.
And if you get all this in line with the theory, so your theory, your statistical model,
Right.
your understanding of the content area,
Yeah.
and when all these are in line,
Yeah.
then it's, as you said, good research is good research.
Good
But
research,
yeah,
yeah.
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 But it requires all the elements are in line.
Right. So to the structural equation model techniques and whatever you do under this larger umbrella, you would also bring in various forms of qualitative research. You spoke about action research.
Yeah.
You spoke about classroom observation, which could also be qualitative.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And we have teacher interviews, we have principal interviews,
Right.
and stakeholders
Yeah.
can be interviewed as well,
Right.
naturally. And also, we can quantify the interviews, and if we want, we can have this quantification of interviews to be included as a part in our statistical model.
Right.
And that's possible. And mixed method research, as you know very well
Yeah.
know, can be done. And we can so look at these phenomena from different angles.
Yeah. Very interesting, Tuomo. So when is it that we can probably wait for the first set of papers, which we can read?
I hope 2025 autumn period would be probably some publications, hopefully. But you'll be the first one. I'll let you know. And I email all the research.
Great.
As soon as we get them.
That'd be wonderful. Maybe then, once you have your papers out, another conversation to really walk us through those insights would be wonderful.
That would be fun, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Tuomo, for this time and for sharing these insights from ongoing projects. I know it's never easy, when it's an ongoing project. But then I think in this conversation, we've had some wonderful insights from the work that you're doing, the research work. And it gives us a lot of ideas in terms of also what is it that we could look at in terms of the problems that we face in the Indian education system, and try and see whether some of the things can be looked at using similar frames of reference. And that, I think, is really the takeaway. Other than, of course, the insights, the specific ones that you have provided from the projects that you've had. So wish you all the best for the projects, and look forward to talking to you again very soon.
Thank you, Rishi. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you for being so welcoming all the time we have been here. This has been a wonderful experience so far. Looking forward to days coming.
Thank you so much. So that was Tuomo Virtanen, senior university lecturer from the University of Jyväskylä, Finland, sharing with us some of his ongoing work, and we are really very grateful to him and University of Jyväskylä for having shared this with us. See you all.